All right, today we're diving into an absolutely unbelievable story. We're talking about a 13-year-old homeless kid who somehow managed to build what is now a massive $12.8 billion luxury empire. Yep, we're unpacking the complete story of Louis Vuitton. We're going to break down the brilliant strategies, the crazy innovations, and honestly, some pretty dark survival tactics that created the absolute pinnacle of high-end luxury.
It's just such a wild contrast, right? I mean, we all know Louis Vuitton today as this ultimate status symbol. It's flaunted by celebrities, royalty, you name it. But the origins of this brand? They couldn't be further from all that glitz and glamour. We're starting with a starving runaway who literally had to sleep in forests just to survive. So how in the world do you go from freezing in the woods to running a $12.8 billion global monopoly? Well, let's get into it, because the history here is absolutely fascinating.
Okay, let's dive into this. Born to a really poor farming family, Louis's life completely turned upside down when his mother passed away in 1831. He couldn't take his stepmother's mistreatment anymore, so in 1835, at just 13 years old, he secretly ran away from home. He set his sights on Paris. The catch? Paris was 292 miles away, and he had absolutely zero money. It took him 2 grueling years, traveling entirely on foot, doing odd jobs in random villages, and sleeping in the woods before he finally dragged himself into Paris in 1837.
Now, right when Louis arrived, the railway boom was just taking off in Paris, and that meant wealthy travelers suddenly needed custom boxes to safely pack their bulky luggage. Louis managed to grab a job with a craftsman named Monsieur Maréchal, but he didn't just punch a clock, you know. He dedicated 16 long years of his life to absolutely mastering this craft. He got so insanely skilled that the elite started specifically requesting his work. His reputation totally skyrocketed, eventually landing him gigs making custom boxes for ultra-high society clients. We're talking even Napoleon's wife. By 1854, this formerly homeless boy had opened his very own shop.
And this right here is where Louis introduced his first real genius business innovation. See, before LV, trunks were these heavy, dome-shaped things made of pigskin that cracked all the time. The dome shape was meant to let rain slide off, but think about it. You can't stack dome-shaped trunks on a train. So Louis solved this massive space problem by inventing the flat-top rectangular trunk. He ditched the heavy leather for a lightweight, highly durable, waterproof gray Trianon canvas. This flat, stackable design, it completely revolutionized train travel for the elite.
Word of these modern trunks spread like wildfire, especially after the Suez Canal opened in 1869, which brought all these global elites flooding into France. Almost overnight, Louis Vuitton became this massive international status symbol. The Viceroy of Egypt actually loved them so much, he signed a document making LV an official royal supplier. And Indian royalty? They were completely obsessed. The Maharaja of Kapurthala ordered 60 custom trunks for everything from turbans to swords, and Maharaja Hari Singh of Jammu and Kashmir ordered 38 highly customized trunks in just 7 months.
But then, disaster struck. The Franco-Prussian War hit in 1870. Louis was forced into a refugee camp and his entire workshop was destroyed and looted. He literally lost everything. But this is where he brilliantly turned tragedy into a huge opportunity. Because of the war, property prices in Paris absolutely crashed. So, taking whatever tiny savings he had left, he immediately scooped up prime, suddenly cheap real estate right near the railway station and the Grand Hotel. When the war ended and people started traveling again, boom, his business was perfectly positioned to bounce back stronger than ever.
Of course, as LV became famous, copycats and, get this, train robbers became a huge problem. Wealthy travelers were terrified of having their valuables stolen in transit. So, Louis's son, George Vuitton, steps in and invents this revolutionary multi-pin tumbler lock. And to prove just how good it was, George takes out a newspaper ad with a super bold challenge. He writes, "We challenge the famous escape artist Harry Houdini to break out of a Louis Vuitton trunk." Well, Houdini actually declined the challenge, and that brilliant marketing move instantly proved the lock's worth, and wealthy clients just lined up to buy them.
Now, what's really interesting about this next part is how they tackled those persistent copycats. In 1896, George Vuitton made a total genius move. He designed the iconic LV monogram we all know today, originally to honor his late father. He drew inspiration from Japanese floral motifs and created this complex pattern of leaves, flowers, and the initials L and V. But here's the kicker. It was made entirely by hand with such extreme precision that it was just way too expensive and difficult for counterfeiters to easily fake. He officially trademarked the whole shebang in 1905, basically locking down their brand identity forever. As we move into the World War II era, we do have to look at a highly controversial chapter, which is detailed in the book The French Saga. While many French businesses proudly boycotted and shut down as an act of resistance against the Nazi occupation, Louis Vuitton did not. The brand actively collaborated with the Nazi puppet government, even setting up a shop specifically to fulfill special orders for them. It is a historical fact and one the company defends today as a strict, necessary survival tactic, arguing that without doing it, the LV brand simply would have ceased to exist.
Following the war, the company actually expanded pretty slowly until a massive turning point hit in the 1970s. Enter son-in-law Henry Racamier. He took over what was still honestly a pretty small family business and completely transformed it into a global machine. He noticed wholesalers were taking these massive cuts, so he just eliminated them entirely, choosing to sell directly through LV's own retail shops. Then, he took the company public on the stock exchange to raise a ton of capital. Within just 6 years, this direct-to-consumer model rocketed their profits to an astonishing 250 million euros.
But here's the thing. Going public brought them incredible wealth, sure, but it also exposed the company to a massive vulnerability, open market shares. And this brings us to a huge, dramatic pivot in our story. We're transitioning right out of the founding family's golden era of craftsmanship and straight into a high-stakes corporate thriller. So who actually owns Louis Vuitton today? Well, spoiler alert, it is no longer the Vuitton family. Let's look at exactly how they managed to lose control of their own empire.
Okay, so fearing a hostile takeover, LV merged with Moet Hennessy in 1987, forming LVMH. But the two sides were constantly fighting for power internally. In what turned out to be a fatal miscalculation, LV's Henry Racamier brought in a businessman named Bernard Arnault as an ally to help him win control. Big mistake. Instead, Arnault secretly used $1.6 billion and then another $600 million to quietly buy up LVMH shares right under their noses. By January 1989, Arnault had executed a ruthless hostile takeover, ousted the founding family entirely, and crowned himself chairman.
Once he was in charge, Arnault didn't just sit back. He implemented this aggressively ambitious growth playbook to literally monopolize the luxury market. He used horizontal expansion to just buy out major competitors like Tiffany and Bulgari. Vertically, he added Dior perfumes and Tag Heuer watches, so he could offer everything luxury under one single corporate roof. His hostile takeover tactics were so fierce that rival Gucci actually had to issue new shares just to dilute his ownership. And the Hermès family, they had to desperately consolidate their 67% control just to legally block him from stealing their 200-year-old company.
And this brilliantly illustrates the sheer scale of the empire Arnault built. Just look at this number, $26 million. That is the staggering amount LV pays in annual rent for just one single store in Paris. It perfectly highlights their modern strategy. Because they cater strictly to the absolute elite, they have to secure the most prime, prestigious global real estate locations, regardless of the exorbitant cost. Whether it's $14 million in Rome or $51 million in Hong Kong, they just pay it, no questions asked, to maintain that supreme status in the luxury world.
Now, to justify those massive price tags you see in those expensive stores, LV heavily markets their extreme manufacturing process. They claim their artisans have to go through 2 full years of mandatory training. Once they're trained, it takes anywhere from 100 to 300 highly guarded steps to hand-make a single bag in France or Italy. To ensure absolute perfection, they do things like testing the zippers 500 times while carrying a 7-pound weight. It's this meticulous quality control that makes some limited edition LV bags literally considered a better financial investment than gold on the secondary market.
And a huge part of maintaining that crazy investment value is their strict zero discount rule. Let me be clear. If you see a discounted LV bag, it's either secondhand or it's fake. They simply do not do sales. Historically, if their products didn't sell, the company would literally burn the unsold stock right under customs supervision. Why? To claim back import taxes and ensure the market was never flooded with cheap excess goods. Though it's worth noting that new environmental protection laws in Europe are finally forcing them to step away from this burning practice.
But despite all this overwhelming success, the modern empire definitely faces severe pushback today. A major Guardian report alleged that LV actually uses a made-in-France loophole, outsourcing the bulk of their production to cheap labor in Romania for just around 133 euros a month, and then only adding the final touches back in France. On top of that, PETA has heavily targeted the brand over animal cruelty allegations regarding their crocodile and ostrich skin farms. PETA got so aggressive with it, they actually bought LVMH shares just so their activists could legally infiltrate and disrupt LVMH shareholder meetings from the inside.
So,
As we wrap this all up, we really have to look at the big picture here. We've traced this incredible path from a hungry, homeless 13-year-old boy walking hundreds of miles to Paris, all the way to a $12.8 billion luxury empire that's now controlled by one of the world's most aggressive corporate monopolies. It is a crazy tale of brilliant craftsmanship mixed with some seriously ruthless business survival. So I'll leave you with this. From a starving boy's dream to a corporate monopoly, does knowing the true cost and history of this luxury change its value to you? Thanks for joining me on this explainer.